Hey guys, so today we are working on the skeletal system. I'm going to have you watch this video in lieu of a lecture. I'm going to explain what's important for this unit, for the skeletal system, and everything that you need to know. So listen carefully and make sure that you ask me any questions that you might have about the skeletal system after this short video. So just some general announcements first. We have 3 weeks left in the grading cycle. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, you'll have Thanksgiving break, and then we'll have one more week after. So this means that you have two major grades left on your final 6 weeks report card. The first one will be a skeletal system practical. This is going to be next Monday, November 16th, so a week from today. This is going to be similar to your histology practical. It will be timed slides with bones, identification with no word bank. I will be providing you some practice slides, and you'll have some games that you'll be playing as well. Your last major grade of the 6 weeks will be a research article analysis. I'm going to be explaining this more in tomorrow's class, but essentially you are finding a research topic that is related to something that you're interested in, anatomy and physiology, and you're going to be doing a continual mini research project for the rest of the semester. So I'll explain more about that tomorrow, but just so that you can mark down some important dates, this assignment will be due on Monday, November 30th. Okay, so this will be due after Thanksgiving break during that last week of the 6 weeks. So you have already two very important slide sets that I would consider looking at. And this is a list of things that you absolutely need to know about the skeletal system. General functions, the axial versus appendicular skeleton. You need to be able to identify all bones in your major grade assignment that you just completed. If you have not yet turned that in, please do. This also includes how many of each we have. For example, how many thoracic vertebrae we have or how many true ribs we have. So you do need to know that for your major grade. You also need to know types of bone and the anatomy of bones, okay? Some things that fall under this category is compact versus spongy bone, red versus yellow marrow, and cells inside of your bone and what they do. Additionally, you need to know different types of joints and then some developmental aspects such as what fontanelles are, what ossification means, and then how bones grow and form, what osteoporosis means, and then examples of diseases and conditions, which can be found on both of those slide sets that I gave you. So I just want to highlight some important pieces along with this slide set. So the main functions that you need to know, there's 4 of them, could be 5 if you separate these two. But the first function of your skeletal system will be support and protection. Your skeletal system is an internal framework that supports and anchors all of your soft organs. Obviously, we would be a pile of mush if it weren't for your skeletal system. Additionally, body movement, that's your second function. So your muscular system, your nervous system, and your skeletal system coordinates all of your body movement. Third, storage of inorganic materials. Your bones actually store things, okay? So you have 2 different types of marrow, which is inside of your bone, and fat is stored in your yellow marrow, and phosphorus and calcium and a couple of other elements are stored in your bone tissue in your other marrow. The last function will be blood cell formation. This is also known as hemopoiesis. I always have trouble saying this word. And it occurs in your red bone marrow. Okay? So those are the 4 functions that you need to know. Could be 5 if you split that support and protection. Your axial versus appendicular skeletons. So you need to know the difference between these 2 areas in the skeletal system, what they include, and then how to label those bones. So your axial skeleton will be your head, neck, and your trunk. This includes your skull, your hyoid bone, which is this little floating bone kind of like in your upper neck area. your vertebral column, sternum, and your thoracic cage, okay, which is your ribs. Your appendicular skeleton is going to be your limbs and bones that connect the pectoral girdle and the pelvic girdle. So here's a quick picture for you. You can obviously look at some more images, but your axial, again, think of it as like that main chunk, okay, that kind of holds everything together. Your skull, vertebrae, your ribs, okay? And then your appendicular skeleton is kind of everything that just hangs off of that, okay, and allows you to walk and move your arms. So here you can see both of those girdles that I was talking about here. So you need to know how to label most of the bones that are in these places. You see some things that you might not need to be able to label. So these grooves and acromials, you do need to know what these terms mean, but you don't need to know how to label them, okay? So you need to know what an acromion process is, which is this kind of little pointy process that comes off of a bone. And then we just label grooves as grooves. And then here's your pelvic girdle as well. So pectoral and pelvic girdle. As for bone structure, you have a lot of different images that you can use to study for bone structure. You need to know how to label the following, okay? And so this is a wonderful example for you. Again, you have other ones. What's most important also about the structure of bone and the anatomy of bone is that you understand what the purpose is behind that, okay? So for example, your articular cartilage is going to be kind of up here on the top, okay? And this is going to connect with another bone. This is actually going to form a joint here. And this articular cartilage is there for padding, okay? So make sure when you're studying the anatomy of things that you actually know the physiology and what it's there for. You also have an example of your periosteum. This is a membrane that covers the entire bone, okay? So that's also for protection. So be able to label all of these items on a long bone. Here is another image that might be helpful for you. At the ends of long bones, there's always going to be cartilage for that padding and to form a joint. You need to know the difference between spongy and compact bone. Okay, so you can see the spongy bone will be at both ends, okay, at the ends of the bone. And then your compact bone is kind of within here. And then your medullary cavity and what makes up the internal part of the bone, you need to know that as well. So some microscopic terms that you'll need to know. Osteocytes are exactly what they sound like. Cyte means cell, osteo means bone. So these are simply bone cells. So mature bone cells that are enclosed in these tiny chambers that we call lacunae. And I'm going to show you a picture and an image of this. But again, you'll need to know the formation of these, of the bone and how to label at the cellular level. These will form rings. Okay, so these lacunae form rings called lamina around Haversian canals, which house these tiny blood vessels. And then we have these cool canals called canaliculi, and these will link or bring together osteocytes. The purpose of Haversian and Volkmann canals is to provide passageways for blood vessels because your bone does have blood vessels inside of it. And so let's look at an image real quickly. So here is an osteon. Okay, so an osteon is kind of a unit that makes up your bone. So you have many osteons, which together create the entire bone. Your osteocytes are here. So these are mature bone cells. Okay, so you can see the cells that are pink here. And then within your osteon, you have kind of a passageway in the very middle. And this is where your blood vessels and your nerves are going to be as well. Okay, so you can see the yellow is going to represent nerves, and then you've got your blood vessels in there as well. The periosteum, again, is going to be that protection around the bone. And then you have Haversian and Volkmann's canal. Now, the difference between these two canals is simply going to be the direction in which they are going to run. Haversian canals will run lengthwise or up and down, okay, vertically in the bone. And then the Volkmann's canals are going to actually just connect the Haversian canals. Okay, so that is the difference there. Make sure to be able to recognize that difference if I ask you to label something. And then again, you have spongy bone, which is going to be on either ends of your bone, and it looks very different than compact bone, okay, which is this. When we were looking at the histology slides, the bone that kind of looked like trees, okay, that was your that was this, okay, that was your compact bone, and you could kind of see your osteocytes. But spongy bone looks very different, kind of looks like cheese. You also need to know the three types of joints. Okay, so you have, and they do have kind of two different names, which are interchangeable. So make sure that you recognize those and know that those words basically mean the same thing. Okay, so you have non movable, which are also called synarthrotic or fibrous joints. These are going to be like sutures in the skull. Okay, so the sutures are going to be the things that connect the skull together, the bones in the skull. You have ampiarthrotic, which are going to be slightly movable, kind of like your vertebrae. Your vertebrae have lots of cushioning in between it. You can move your back, and these are also called cartilaginous. And then you also have diarthrotic, which are also called synovial, and these are the movable joints. Knees, elbows, your wrist, shoulder. These will use synovial fluid for lubrication, and there are 4 different types. If you look in the slides, you will have to know examples of these different types. So make sure that you study that also in your textbook. This is a beautiful picture of bone growth, okay? One of the things that I would study is how a bone actually grows. This would probably be something that I would ask in an extended response question. And if you look at these slides, this explains it perfectly. So bone starts off as cartilage. And so you have hyaline cartilage as kind of a model to create this bone. Okay, and again, this is happening all throughout a baby's growth while it's in the womb. And even after a baby is born, a lot of these hyaline cartilage places in their body are fully becoming bones. Okay, so the full bone growth or procedure kind of doesn't really take place until adulthood. So even as you are teens and adolescents, if you've heard of a growth spurt and when your bones kind of ache, it's because your bones are fully forming. After this hyaline cartilage kind of provides a model, you will have what we call caviation, which is going to be this kind of cartilage matrix that kind of starts to form in the middle, which then becomes this spongy bone, okay? And so you can see here that the blood vessel will start to connect to this spongy bone because there has to be blood vessels inside of those bones. And then there might be more than one ossification center, depending on the size of the bone and the type of the bone. Especially if it's a long bone, there's going to be more than one ossification center, which again is where that spongy bone will start to take place with the bone growth. Okay, so here you can see that there's 3 ossification centers. And then finally, ossification of the epiphysis, which is going to be the ends of the bone. And so that is going to take place at the very end, okay, of this growth. And then you will see the epiphyseal plates, which are going to be right here on either ends of the epiphysis of the bone. Here's a good example of ossification. So again, in the embryo, of course, you have bone forming in the middle with cartilage on the outside. In a young person, you have less cartilage kind of on the outside. And then in an adult, you only have that cartilage on the very ends of the bone. Okay, so ossification is simply the form of that, the formation of those long bones or those other bones with the disappearance of the cartilage over time. If you have any questions about the skeletal system after you kind of go through both of the slides that I've provided for you, after you have completed your major grade labeling assignment, after this video, after both of your Ed Puzzle videos that you have watched, please let me know. Your textbook goes very in depth into detail. You should have read the entire skeletal system chapter and also taken notes. So if you have any questions, please let me know. But for now, you're going to be working on your joint analysis assignment, which is on the hub.